Uglies is a movie that is about making extreme claims. And I found it very irritating that the choice seemed to be ugly and smart or pretty and stupid. Because in the case of the Uglies, I found the movie pretty ugly and pretty stupid. I'll start right off the bat by admitting that I have never read the Uglies novel. As someone who is big into reading YA, but never got around to reading the book back during its heyday, I totally missed out on the Uglies bug. And from what I've seen with the movie, I'm not particularly interested in reading the book to see if I would prefer the source material. I know I won't. Shocker. But the thing about why I have no interest in seeing if the book would be better than the movie is because I don't particularly like the message at the core of what Uglies is about. But before we dive into that, let me take you all into what happened in the movie. I'll try my best to keep it brief, but if I fail at that, and I have a feeling that I most certainly will, I apologize. You all know that keeping things brief is not my forte, especially because I like giving all the details, so it almost feels like you watched it yourself. Now, the Ugly starts with Tally, who is the best friend to a guy named Paris. Yes, you heard that right. Not Paris, but Paris. Clearly, he should have had a conversation with his parents about their name choice and the why of it, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who was confused by said name. But alas, the world of the Uglies is one that is devoid of parents, like most stereotypical YA novels. But the reason for their absence is at least interesting, and we'll get to that shortly. But back to Tally and Paris. The movie starts by giving us an exposition dump about how society some centuries back ruined things. Kind of like what we are doing right now. But that past civilization was called the Rusties. Probably to allude to our rusty ass destroying the earth and its ecosystem with our pollution of it, tied mostly to the fact that our energy sources and decisions do nothing but destroy the planet. But back to past civilizations. Anyway, Tally tells us that shit hits the fan, the earth is on fire, and then humanity's greatest minds came up with a particular white orchid that would serve as a renewable energy source. One that was more sustainable to the earth and basically saved us. In addition to that, however, humanity also decided that the reason why wars existed and people fought each other back in the age of the Rusties was because society was based off of a strata of attractiveness. And so to combat that, everyone in this new era had to undergo plastic surgery at the age of 16 to become pretty. Because once you're pretty, everybody's all good. I apologize for the amount of snark that is going to be in this video because I remember watching this movie and having a ton of, huh? For example, is this story attempting to tell us that before the bioengineered plants and surgery, there were no adults in say their 60s or 70s? If there were, how did they convince them to undertake the surgery to become pretty? What was the justification given? Did they meet grandpa and go all, "Yo, grandpa, I know you're 70 and concerned about whoever is always stealing your teeth," which by the way is Josh. "But grandpa, wouldn't you like to be pretty?" What? There were no adults, no grandparents, great-grandparents during that time? Nothing? Because the story is very focused in limiting and narrowing the world in which it is set in a way that kept taking me out of what I was watching, because I had questions about how they got to that point that was never really answered by the end. But I'm sorry, I digress. Back to the Uglies. Tally tells us that when people reach age 16, they get to have a surgery that turns them from ugly to pretty. And once this change happens, they are taken into the capital city where they get to live out their pretty lives. Her best friend Paris is going to be turning 16 the day after, and he and Tali reminisce about their time together. They met back when they were children, where it is implied that once kids reach a certain age in their society, they are sent off to some sort of boarding school to wear grey for the rest of their lives and sit in their ugly feelings to build the anticipation for when they would become pretty. Now, as I'm saying this, I'm sure we both recognize what this is. A manipulation tactic to have these children cut off from any sort of love and affirmation and care from parents who research has stated are critical to the early development of a child's self-esteem. But the world of Uglies doesn't want these kids with healthy self-esteem. That defeats the entire purpose of their pretty surgery, doesn't it? So back to Tali and Paris. They flash back to when they met, how they became friends, with nicknames they call each other. Paris is known for his big nose that, I don't know, maybe it's because I wear glasses, but I couldn't see a hint of said nose. Tali is called Squint because of her squinty eyes, and let me tell you, I squinted extra hard at my television. Couldn't see that either. But we get this awesome scene of how Paris got injured when they were kids and accidentally cut himself on a piece of glass, and Tali does the same so they can have matching scars, which they vow to not heal when they get their surgery so they can remember their promise to each other and their friendship. And now they are 15, right on the cusp of 16 in Paris's case. The two of them vowed that they would be reunited in 3 months after Tali turned 16, because then she would be pretty and can move into the capital city to be with pretty Paris. And Paris makes a promise to Tali that he would meet her by the bridge in a month so he can tell her about how life has changed for him now that he is pretty, to get Tali even more excited for when she can get her surgery. Now, if your guess is that life would change so much that pretty Paris would not be coming to meet ugly Tali in a month, you would be totally right. Because after Tali spends way too long waiting for a Paris that never showed, she decides fuck it. She's going to take her ugly ass into Pretty Town and find her pretty best friend to ask him what in the pretty hell he was thinking to forget her ugly ass. So she sneaks in easily. Things come so easily to Tali, or rather, it's more of a case of how it's depicted, and that's part of my complaints for this movie. Things come so easily to Tali like she's the ordained one, and the world of Uglies exists to make sure that everything aligns perfectly for her in a way that it all works to her advantage. Which I know this movie wasn't going for anything deeper, but I found interesting, because that's the point often raised about pretty privilege. But I will go into more details on that later on in the video. So as I was saying, Tali sneaks in. As she wanders into the space with all the pretties and her still ugly face, someone conveniently throws a mask at her. And when she puts it on, it hides her face and features and transforms her outfit into something beautiful. So for a moment there, she gets to fit in. And Tali visibly loves the city. It's brighter, there are tons of neon lights and colors. People are laughing more and smiling more. It doesn't have the muted tones of the city of ugly she escaped from. You can visibly see her wanting to be a part of this world. And I have to give it to the movie. I think the soundtrack for Uglies was pretty cool. I definitely am keeping my fingers crossed that they release it on music platforms so I can jam to it, because I loved it. But back to Tali, she wanders in the party, and in this big city, which ends up being like someone's balcony at a party, she conveniently runs into Paris almost immediately. He looks the same, except his hair is blonde and his eyes have changed. That's it. Oh, also, he doesn't give half a fuck. The promise he made to Tali about not healing that scar, out the window. He healed it with a quickness. Talks down to her in a way that would have anyone's shoulders bristling, and is so cold as he basically tells her that he didn't show up at their bridge because he didn't see the point. He would rather wait until she's pretty before they meet. Tally is devastated. But before we are allowed to sit in that moment and for Tally to really feel the weight of that pain, something which becomes a consistent theme in this film, neither we, the audience, nor the characters ever get room to just breathe and process the shock of devastating information. Tally's identity is discovered. Because, she took off her mask so Paris could see that it was her. Not like it mattered to him one bit. And she got busted. She had to run, make her escape from the party. Grabbed some jacket and jumped off the roof. Turns out the jacket is a bungee jacket, which creates some sort of force field that halted her descent just before she would have splattered on the ground. Futuristic things that makes you think so painfully of stories set in the early 2000s. Not like that's the only piece of technology that Tally gets to use, because just as she's almost caught when she gets to the bridge, she's saved by Shay, one of her classmates back in the boring dormitory, who is the rebel girl that back when Tally and Paris were making their promise to each other, we could overhear Shay and her friends talk about some guy named David and the smoke. Automatically, the audience is made to clock Shay as a rebel and a troublemaker. And we get that confirmed because Shay brings Tally on her hoverboard, and together they are able to escape the pursuing law enforcement. This moment of truancy bonds the two girls. Shay sees Tally's shared rebellious spirit and becomes Tally's new best friend. And it's extra special because both girls have the exact same birthday. So unlike what happened with Paris, Tally can fully allow herself to be lost in this friendship with Shay because she knows that she won't lose her like she did Paris, because they would both be pretty at the same time. And that part of the story got to me because, yes, there are parts of this story that made me feel like, ooh, this would have been so good in certain places if the core central theme of this movie had not been something that pissed me off to no end. But back to Tally and Shay. Their relationship develops. Shay teaches Tally how to ride a hoverboard. Tally teaches Shay how to circumvent the systems in their dormitory to trick it into giving them what they want. It's a fun time all around, with the two rule breakers becoming the bestest of friends. Until the day before they turn 16, when Shay admits to Tally that she doesn't want to become pretty. She would rather stay as she is. She would rather stay herself and wants to join the smoke, a community of people who have turned away from the surgery and are living in some sort of natural commune. Tally doesn't think the smoke is real, but Shay tells her that it is, and that the leader, David, is very real. Matter of fact, she's called him over so he can take them both to the smoke. Tally's like, girl, since you met my ass, I have been all about that pretty life. Sure, my actress is a conventionally beautiful woman that Netflix wants to convince you is ugly and all, but please close your eyes to that and imagine that Joey King is ugly, and know that I don't want to be ugly Joey King. I want to be pretty Joey King, and you can be pretty too if you forget about this smoke nonsense. Shay's like, nah fam, but you're my bestie? So here is this piece of paper where I've written in code that only you, a fellow rule breaker and hoverboard rider, can follow. If you decide to change your mind, dearest, you know where to find me. And so Shay becomes Tally's second best friend, who asks Tally to join her, which I think is interesting for the story. At the end of the Pretties is her childhood friend Paris, and on the other end of the Uglies is her most recent best friend and girl who owns her heart. Because if you did not read the very, very gay subtext, that was the relationship between Tally and Shay. Anyway, next morning, Tally is ready for her surgery, but she never gets called in. Instead, she's picked up and flown to special circumstances, most specifically the office of Dr. Cable, played by the always gorgeous Laverne Cox, who is like, I know you want to be pretty. Our society has done nothing but put up images of what you would look like when you finally become pretty at age 16 to make you yearn for that. However, your friend Shay is gone. We think she was nabbed by the smoke and their leader David. And we believe that they are not only hurting her, but they also have a weapon that would destroy the entire city because they hate who we are and what we stand for. As such, we need your help. Tally is like, nope. Sorry, I have nothing to say to you. I don't know where Shay is or how to get to her. But we, the audience, and Dr. Cable can see how much it hurts her to say that because Tally is protective of her friend, yes. But she also wants to be pretty. And Dr. Cable is like, bet. Maybe when you sit in your ugliness for a couple more days, you'll change your mind. And would you know it? After Tally's return to the dormitory, with everyone laughing at her still being ugly even though it's way past her 16th birthday, who shows up in her room but Paris, who conveniently is there to be all like, but you want to be pretty. Being pretty is all we've always wanted. Why would you resist your chance to be pretty? Especially if it's going to save Shay. Now, logically, this is the part where your brain kicks in and you're like, Tally, shouldn't you be connecting the dots? How does Paris know about this? Why does he care? What changed in the last 3 months that turned him from the boy who couldn't be asked, who erased the scar and considered you insignificant until you became pretty? Why and how did he make it into your room? Clearly, someone put him up to this. But Tally's 16, and I get it that she isn't thinking about all of this. Nope. She believes Paris and goes off to follow Shay's instructions to make it to the smoke. Paris, meanwhile, meets with Dr. Cable, which, duh, we all saw that coming. But what we didn't see coming was him saying that going back to Tally made him feel things he hasn't felt since his surgery. He realizes that he misses her and feels that connection to her again. Dr. Cable listens with this patient air and then tells him that she wants him to undergo even more surgery to make him special. See, that is the point where it is solidified for the audience who hadn't picked up on that before, that Dr. Cable is diabolical, even if she looks hot doing it. Hi, Laverne. But back to Tally. She has a couple of near misses in this montage that chronicles. See what I did there? Chronicles of Noria, Chronicles of Tally. No? Sorry. But back to the story. Tally goes through the montage, figuring out Shay's clues, until she makes it to the field of bioengineered orchids, where she falls asleep for the night, only to wake up choking and gasping for breath because everywhere is on fire. And then she's rescued by David, who brings her to the smoke. Now, personally, I would have liked more of Tally being like, David, you fucking maniacal piece of shit. Smoke inhalation is a thing I could have suffocated you ass. Burning the field whilst you see I'm in it? Do you have no brains at all? But alas, Tally is Tally, and I am me. And it's been way too long since I was 16 to fall for a lot of the bullshit in this movie. Thank the gods. But back to Tally. David scans her because this little girl made it to the smoke all on her own, seemingly without any help, and he needed to confirm that she wasn't a spy. He discovers the tracking device that was put into the hoverboard that she has, which he expected because the city-issued hoverboards do have inbuilt tracker in them. But it doesn't discover the tracker in Tally's necklace, which was given to her by Dr. Cable after she agreed to help her locate the smoke. The necklace can only be activated when Tally chooses to unlock it with an eye scan. So she's safe for the moment. David destroys the tracker from the overboard, unaware that destroying it alerts Dr. Cable and the specials of the exact location that the tracker was at before it was destroyed. Keep note of this, everyone, because this will be important. David, meanwhile, concluding that Tally is clean, takes her to one of the smoke's outposts. Not the smoke commune yet, because they're a bit further out. And Tally is reunited with Shay, who is beyond thrilled to have a best friend again. Everyone is like, wow, Tally, you special YA girl. We can't believe you made it over good on you. Except for David's second in command, Croy, who is like, girl, I don't trust you. You really want us to believe that you made it all the way here with no help? Pfft. Unbelievable. Which, as the audience, we are like, dude, chill out. You're right that she's not to be trusted, but the girl really did make it all on her own. Anyway, next they decide to burn down some of those plants, i.e. the orchids, as they tell Tally that the bioengineered orchids are actually damaging the earth, forcing people to move to the pretty cities where they can then be controlled by people like Dr. Cable. So, destroy the environment to create some forced migration. Whilst they burn down the field from atop a helicopter, Shay accidentally falls from the chopper. Tally grabs a rope and dives in after her friend to save her, because remember, the field of orchids is on fire. And whilst all of that is happening, the special forces show up with super speed, super strength, and are seemingly impervious to the flames. Luckily, Tally grabs her friend on time and gets her onto the rope. They are pulled from the flames and the special forces just in time. This act of daring and saving of Shay helps wipe away some of the doubt, and Tally is accepted into the community, although Croy is still a bit suspicious of her. They finally get Tally to the smoke, where it really is a commune of people living together, growing their own food and trading with one another, because money has no value there. It's happy and harmonious, and Tally spends the time searching for the weapon that Dr. Cable told her about, but she doesn't find anything. Meanwhile, she's getting closer to David, who clearly likes her. So much so that he teaches her to shoot a crossbow, which she learns hilariously fast. And when he notices the blisters she got because of the rescue attempt, he gives her a pair of gloves, which Shay notices and is like, yo girl, David really likes you. That shit means something. Because people in the commune trade items that they want and need, and him gifting Tally gloves without asking for anything else in return, gloves he made himself, is a big deal. Tally is uncomfortable about this, especially because she's already admitted to Shay that she sort of came over to try and get Shay to go back. But Shay isn't budging. And Shay insists that Tally has to make a choice if she's staying or wants to go back, as it's not fair to any of them for her to still be undecided. This is what basically pushes Tally to mention to David about her curiosity on whether or not the smoke really does have a weapon capable of destroying the city. David then decides to introduce Tally to his parents, which is a big deal. Because remember, like we stated earlier in this video, theirs is a world where parents basically abandon their children in some sort of dormitory until they are pretty at 16 and can then go on about their lives, because yes, at 16, you get a house and everything and can party for the rest of your life with zero adult supervision. So Tally is not used to seeing this close family unit that David and his parents have, especially because they look like each other, which we, the audience, would take for granted because, like, duh, why wouldn't parents and their offspring look alike? I personally have my mother's nose and mouth and my father's eyes. But since the society of the pretties is one where they have to get plastic surgery at 16, and the surgery often realigns their faces, removing any sort of flaws, so they have these perfectly symmetrical faces that are meant to be beautiful, and you can choose what your eyes would look like, the shape of your nose, your chin, your hair. People often walk out as pretties that look absolutely nothing like their parents, who are also pretties. So David and his family are a heartwarming anomaly to Tally. And when David's parents basically break down the news of what their society is like and how it functions, Tally is left reeling. Because you see, years back, David's parents lived in the city. They were surgeons who were curious and slightly alarmed at the fact that not only did some people occasionally die from the surgeries, which Tally had no idea about, but they also discovered that the surgeries caused brain lesions in those who went through with it. And these lesions basically erased people's personalities and free will, creating the avenue for people like Dr. Cable to, in turn, control the populace, who are now vapid, no thoughts having people who do not question anything except to enjoy being pretty. And to make things even more shocking, David's parents tell Tally that their research revealed that it wasn't that the surgery caused the lesions. It was that the entire basis of the surgery was to give people the lesions, i.e., Dr. Cable and her ilk had turned the pretty surgery into a means to gain power over everybody else. The weapon, therefore, that they had in the smoke was a cure for the lesions that David's parents had been working on. They just needed one more component that can be found in the capital city, in the special circumstances building where Dr. Cable is. And they would have a cure that can help restore people's minds and rid the populace of the lesions in their brains. Now, this part of the story was where I went, oh. So the orchids are basically a metaphor for the fact that, just like with the surgeries, the beauty of it, which is bioengineered, is actually pretty damaging to Earth itself. But on the surface, it looks really pretty, and nobody can tell the damage that it does underneath, which, makes sense to me. And I like symbolism and shit. But back to Tally. The news sets her reeling as she realizes that she's been lied to and manipulated by an egomaniac who wants total control over her and everyone else. And she tosses the necklace in the fire to destroy it. She's feeling guilty, but David comforts her without really knowing the full extent of the betrayal that she's talking about. And he kisses her. But remember what we learned about the tracking devices when they are destroyed. Yes, Dr. Cable and her specials show up the very next morning to round up everybody in the smoke. In trying to get David to show himself, Dr. Cable has Paris, who has now become a special, losing even the slightest trace of emotion he used to have. Remember, Ina has double the amount of brain lesions and she orders him to kill David's father. He does so by snapping his neck. This brings David and Tally out of hiding. David runs to his father's body whilst his mother uses the confusion to slip the vial of the cure that they were working on into David's pouch. Tally accuses Dr. Cable of not telling her that she planned on hurting anybody, which is how everyone in the smoke, Shay inclusive, who looks particularly devastated, realize the truth of Tally's betrayal. And just as Dr. Cable gives the instructions that they all be rounded up, Tally escapes to the shed and basically rigs it to blow, and she uses that to escape. David does the same with his mother's urging, but everyone else in the smoke is taken by Dr. Cable and her specials. David decides to go after them, and Tally comes in to offer her help. is pissed at her, which understandable. Like, girl, your bestie maybe has a crush on you person snapped his father's neck. And you are the one who kind of brought Dr. Cable and the specials into the sacred space. So, yeah, we all got why he was pissed, Tally inclusive. Tally, though, points out that he doesn't know shit about the city as he was born in the smoke. So, sure, he hates her, but she does want to help everyone and he needs her. He accepts her help. They make it into the city. Once again, this goes by way too fast. Just like when it happened with Paris, neither us, the audience, nor the characters get the chance to sit with the devastation that just occurred and the betrayal that they must be feeling. But oh well. They make it into the Uglies dormitory. Tally enlists the help of the other Uglies, the one who were extra chatty with Shay before she and Shay became best friends. She asks them to create a diversion and they're more than happy to help. The diversion works. Tally and David are able to sneak into the facility where they are holding everyone. They help them break free, but are informed that Shay has already been taken in to have the surgery done on her. So everyone rushes to try and save Shay, but it's too late and she's pretty now with long hair and gold eyes because Tally's always wanted gold eyes. I repeat, the gay subtext in this film. Dr. Cable shows up, but thankfully, Tally and David have a plan and they're able to break free of her thanks to Croy, who comes charging in on a helicopter with the fire hose they used to burn the orchid fields. I repeat, the symbolism of using what they used to burn those set of pretties to harm this pretty building, love it. Dr. Cable takes a fire blast in the face, and in the confusion, David's mother steals the second half of the cure that she's been looking to get her hands on, now that they are in the facility. And they make their escape, where they run into Paris, who is outside, waiting. Tally's like, that's my friend. I have to attempt to reason with him, see if there's anything of the Paris I used to know in there. I was half expecting her to break into some, are you the Paris I used to know? 'Cause you're a shadow of yourself. But alas, she doesn't sing. What happens is she notices the piece of glass that is stuck in Paris's hand. He pulls it out and they are back to having matching scars, which is so cute and so emotional. And as he reaches to cradle her cheek, David, who's watching all this from afar, thinks Paris is about to attack Tally. Or maybe Paris is. And I was also caught in the emotion of the moment like Tally was and didn't suspect it. But anyway, David comes swinging to stop Paris from killing Tally like he did his father. That doesn't work because, Paris is a super soldier. Boy is not budging. And he's beating David to a pulp until Tally tackles him, which, he goes flying. I'm a pause here to wonder, please, wonder with me. Are we skinny as Tally able to push away a special forces person to the point of almost throwing him off a building? Like, girl, you're 16. You don't have that body strength. The way this movie pulled me out of this moment to gape at the audacity of the writers and director to think this was in any way a believable sequence. Anyway, now Paris is dangling from the edge like my last brain cell trying to make sense of any of this. And Tally is trying to save him, but now she lacks the upper body strength to do so. And she calls out his nickname, Nose. He responds by calling her Squint, and then falls into the waterfall below. Most likely, the special abilities would help him survive because clearly I foresee a future of Tally being caught in a love square, pulled every which way by a potential romance with David, Paris, and Shay. Because if any of you think Tally is in any way straight in this story, that girl is bi. But yes, I'm sure the plan was to have the audience be shocked when Paris shows up in the second movie, having survived the fall, but we aren't getting a second movie. obviously. Not with how badly this movie is doing. I don't think so. But if they surprise us by giving us more, I would probably watch it to see if my last brain cell would survive that one too. Anyway, back to the members of the Smoke. When reunited, the debate starts about what to do. Now that David's mother has all she needs to complete the cure, they will need a test subject, someone who has undergone pretty surgery and can consent to being experimented on. Of course, everyone wants to return Shay back to normal, but Pretty Shay isn't having it. And David's mother is insistent that because of all that can possibly go wrong, she refuses to become like Dr. Cable, forcing the choice on people who can't consent to it. And this is where Tally decides that that's how she's going to make amends and allows herself to be put through the pretty surgery and then have David's mother cure her of her lesions. When the question is asked about how they would know if she is really herself after her surgery, she tells them, and by extension the audience, that we would know. Croy takes the time to tell her that she's cool and it was wrong to doubt her. And Tally walks to meet the Special Forces and Laverne Cox, who makes burn marks look really hot, and goes, "My name is Tally Youngblood. Make me pretty." Story fast forward, we see a lovely, albeit sterile home, and Tally, now with blonde hair and gold eyes, who's just had her surgery and is now pretty. And in our palm is the scar from her childhood that she's chosen to leave unhealed, which is a sign to us, the audience, that yeah, the real Tally is in there. A great way to hint at a sequel that, like I said earlier, I don't think we're getting. And that is my synopsis, which I cannot believe I in any way thought was going to be brief. I am so sorry about that. But now that you've basically listened to me yap and review this movie for the last 30 minutes, I want to go quickly into the why I said I hated what the message of the Uglies is at its core. Because this film, I think, is, yes, based off of a book that was a social commentary on society's perception of beauty and beauty standards and just how much is lost when that is all we focus on as a society, with the spin-off novels examining the same structure but from the perspective of fame and what it does to a people and the lengths we would go to attain it. But I had a problem with the movie. I can see why Uglies as a story resonated in the early 2000s. Nobody else was exploring that particular theme in quite the same way the writer was. Even if the setting was the stereotypical post-apocalyptic ones that everyone else was basing theirs in, i.e. Hunger Games, Divergent, you get the gist. But here is why I think that the central messaging of the Uglies is one I find problematic. Uglies at its core seems to be pushing this belief that for you to be interesting, to have varied desires, interests, and a personality, you need to not be someone drawn to traditional beauty ideals or standards. It seems like a story that is buying into the stereotypes of pretty people are empty-headed with practically no thoughts going on in their heads because their only focus is on being conventionally attractive. And ugly people don't concern themselves with things like that. Now, do I think there aren't pretty people who do take the very extreme positioning of being pretty and air-headed? No. I think that the world does have people who are pretty and have no light upstairs. But I also believe that the world also has people who are ugly and have no lights upstairs. Just like there are pretty people who are pretty smart and ugly people who are pretty stupid. For example, do I believe that Elon Muskrat is ugly and stupid, even with that joke of a high IQ? Yes, I do. What your appearance looks like on the outside should have no correlation with what is going on upstairs. And I think that this belief that you have to sacrifice one for the other is something that is quite flawed and some would say dangerous. Because Uglies doesn't say anything new about stereotypes. Uglies doesn't say anything new about us not forcing people into a box because of our obsessions with beauty and what we look like on the outside. Uglies is not even saying what matters is who you are inside and not outside, which is ideally the position one would expect this film to take. If truly the conversation is about the flaws of a society being obsessed with outward appearances and a need for us to look inwards. By implying that the beautiful in their society have something wrong with their heads to gain that beauty, what Uglies is telling us is that being beautiful is a flaw. And now I wonder if curing the lesions would also mean reverting the pretties to their ugly state. Because one is a physical change and the other is a neurological one. And although the reason why the surgery is gotten to change their physical appearance is so the lesions can grow in their brains, both can be separated. So would Tally's cure surgery turn her back into the Tally she was before the pretty surgery? Or will she still be physically beautiful without the lesions, which means she gets to keep her outward appearance without losing her mind or personality or identity? Because if that's the case, then she gets to be pretty and smart. So doesn't that then render what the central message of this film is null and void? Like, I know we aren't going to get a second movie. Netflix doesn't even bother giving us a second season of shows we love. Imagining that they would attempt to film the rest of the books in this trilogy is just a pipe dream at this point. But if you're someone who read Uglies and its sequels, Pretties, and Specials, please let me know in the comments, after Tally's cure surgery, does she remain pretty externally? Or does she request for another surgery to return to being physically one of the Uglies? Because here is the thing, theirs is a society of people that have basically been brainwashed and conditioned into thinking that being pretty is the pinnacle that they should aspire to. This thinking was not caused by the lesions, it predated it. If you only get the lesions after you turn 16 and you've undergone the surgery, then that means that the rest of society who are still ugly, are lesion free. Is this movie trying to tell us that after the news is revealed about the pretty surgery causing lesions, but there being a cure for it that is neurological but not physical, there wouldn't be people lining up in the dozens to be turned pretty, then in turn get the cure to lose the lesions but retain the beauty they've been programmed by their society to want? Because the conversation isn't about the moral decay of a society that only sees value in people's external appearances. No, this story is a story of a heavily policed state that is seeking to control its citizenry through brainwashing them into an all-consuming desire to be beautiful, which in turn is the avenue through which they can then modify their bodies into something that can be controlled, devoid of any bit of thought or reason. If we lose the state and gain the cure, it doesn't mean that society automatically rejects beauty. Instead, those who have been armed are healed and get to go about their lives still pretty. So what is the point? This movie is so strange with regards what it chooses to say and how it says it, that now I'm wondering as I'm filming this video if maybe I shouldn't just read the book. If anything, because I'm curious about these characters and if Scott Westerfeld, the author of the Uglies trilogies, really explored this theme of society's decay and the moral bankruptcy of pretty people and pretty privilege. Because if he does succeed in the book, then all the power to him. And I'm really impressed with that. But if he doesn't, however, then I'm even more confused about the why of the story. and by extension, the movie itself. Because even if Scott wrote this to do a surface level commentary about pretty privilege and the access it gives us within society, then what does that say about our lead character, Tally, who is meant to be ugly, and yet the world of this movie makes things come so easily to her in a way that is reminiscent of someone who has been so blessed and favored by society that they seemingly don't need to work as hard to get the things they want because of their pretty privilege. Like Tally, who gets to navigate the world of uglies in a way that pretty people navigate the larger world because of society's obsession with beauty. And I just wonder if this is something that went over everybody's head. If maybe the movie should have shown just how much harder it is for Tally, how she struggles to fit in, how not everything seems to align for her benefit or come easily to her, to the extent that she seems like she doesn't put in so much work. Something that people who talk about pretty privilege bring up about that particular state of being and society's value and reward of it. It all just left me feeling very confused and had me asking a lot of questions. But that's me. What about you? Have you watched The Uglies? What are your thoughts about what the movie is trying to say? Do you agree or disagree with what I have to say about it? Hit the like button if you do agree. Hit the dislike button if you don't. I think it's a pretty beautiful thing when you get to interact with a creator's content in whatever way you choose to. Which of course also means that if you do choose to share this video with others so they can hear what I have to say and join in the conversation, I would be much grateful for that, as it does help my channel reach more people, which helps it grow and is incredibly supportive of my content. Speaking of support, a huge thank you to my patrons who help keep the lights on. Thank you. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, the link to do so is in the description box. I make new videos 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Whilst you wait for new content from me, do check out my thoughts about It Ends With Us and its central theme of control if you haven't seen it yet. Until next time, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.